the cause of a television legend's death. On daytime television, Anthony Geary was regarded for decades as an unstoppable force. His presence was so strong that fans thought he would go on forever through the characters he played. Fans, coworkers, and generations of viewers who had grown up watching him rule the screen were shocked to learn of his death at the age of 78 in this made-up story. In this hypothetical situation, he died after a protracted, peaceful struggle that few people were aware of, rather than abruptly or violently. Beneath his public persona of humor and fortitude, he was engaged in a personal battle that finally led to his demise. This article examines that hypothetical cause of death, the circumstances surrounding it, and the psychological fallout. The world seemed oddly motionless in the peaceful aftermath of Anthony Geary's death. It was the somber, contemplative silence that follows the death of someone who had already given so much of himself to time, not the boisterous hush that follows shock. There was no turmoil or controversy around his passing. Rather, death came softly, almost respectfully, as if life itself recognized the significance of his identity and decided not to be harsh in its last moments. Those closest to Anthony claimed that acceptance, not fear, dictated his latter years. Long before his health started to deteriorate, he had moved away from the limelight, preferring seclusion over recognition and quiet over cheers. Complications from a protracted, peaceful illness, the kind that doesn't yell, rush, or demand attention but gradually begs the body to rest, were given as his fictional cause of death. It wasn't abrupt. There was no violence. It was just time. Anthony Geary's life before his death is what makes this loss particularly poignant, not how he passed away. He led a purposeful life. He paid attention to his body. When the world continued to accelerate, he decelerated. Anthony opted for calm in a society that frequently exalts perpetual action. In many respects, his decision shaped his last chapter. He talked candidly about becoming older, according to those who visited him in his final months. He did not view it as a foe. He handled it like a teacher. He never expressed resentment, but he did realize the bodily changes, the weariness, the silent aches, the way time settles into the bones. Rather, he spoke with appreciation, thankfulness for a physique that has supported him for many years of narrative. Thank you for a mind that could still recall important lines, faces, and moments. His strength was more negatively impacted than his spirit by the imaginary sickness that ultimately took his life, which was portrayed as sluggish and degenerative. On certain days, he needed assistance walking, and on other days, routine was replaced by rest. Even yet, he maintained his cerebral acuity, emotional awareness, and profound introspection. He knew what was going on, and even though it made the waiting more difficult, maybe that knowing softened the farewell. After a long life, death may not necessarily feel like a theft. When a room is completely empty, it can often feel like a door being gently drawn shut. Anthony's life had been full of purpose as well as accomplishment. He had worked hard, loved profoundly, and left when the time was right. In this fictional account, his cause of death was not tragic. It was the end. Fans are still upset by the loss. Anthony Geary was more than simply a performer. He was always there, which is why it stings. Through their television screens, people welcomed him into their homes for decades. He was present on both typical days and exceptional occasions. He was present both while viewers were young and as they got older. Even if you never met them, losing someone like that feels intimate. The contrast between his strong on-screen persona and the subdued manner in which his life ended is what makes his passing particularly poignant. There were no frantic last moments, no urgent equipment, and no dramatic hospital scenes. Calm prevailed instead. Family, rooms that are familiar, gentle discussions. The kind of conclusion that a lot of people want, but few actually get. Anthony apparently talked more about memories and less about fear in his last days. He went back to times that made him happy, not accolades or notoriety, but long talks, laughter on set, and the assurance that he had done his work honestly. He thought those times would not be erased when death eventually came. It would just put them in a different location. A challenging reality is also brought to light by the fictional cause of death. Occasionally, the body just reaches its limit. It is due to completion rather than failure. Anthony's death challenges us to embrace a more compassionate reality in a society that is always looking for someone or something to blame. Not all deaths can be avoided. Not all endings are unjust. Some lives end precisely how they were intended to. However, acceptance does not make grief go away. The sorrow is genuine. It silently resides in the hearts of admirers who have never thought of a world without him. In the void left by his voice, it lingers, and it manifests itself in unexpected ways, such as when a rerun plays, a familiar sight emerges, or a memory comes back to life. The understanding that Anthony Geary left no unresolved business behind lessens that anguish. His legacy was already finished. He left behind characters that are still alive. His performances still provide solace, amusement, and inspiration. His story was sealed rather than interrupted by his imagined death. The manner his life ended also has a profoundly human quality. It serves as a reminder that even icons pass away. Legends get weary too. Eventually, even the most powerful voices turn into whispers. And there is a connection in that fact. Even though Anthony's death is fictional, it represents the process that each of us will eventually go through. The gradual letting go, the introspection, and the last rest. Maybe that's why this loss is so painful. Losing Anthony Geary is not the only issue. It's about facing time itself. It's about realizing that the individuals who influence our lives, even those who are far away, won't always be there. And that insight challenges us to cling more firmly to our passions while we still have them. Even though Anthony Geary is no longer present in this imaginary story, his contributions endure. Perhaps the most significant legacy of all is the depth of a person's life prior to death, rather than how they passed away. The last years, a life spent outside the spotlight. Anthony had progressively stopped making public appearances in this tale. Fans thought he was just having fun in retirement, but the reality, which only a select few knew, was more nuanced. He had opted for seclusion over attention. Interviews became infrequent. Public gatherings were graciously turned down. It appeared to be peace to the outer world. It was preparation on the inside. Those closest to Anthony in this fictional story claimed that he had been dealing with a neurological ailment that was gradually impairing his energy, coordination, and ability to speak clearly. Rest was recommended by doctors. He did what he was told, but he never truly died. He took trips. He read. In his private notebooks, he pondered identity, celebrity, and the peculiar feeling of being well known to millions, but poorly understood by a select few. The made-up death cause, a quiet degenerative disease. According to this account, complications from a degenerative neurological disorder, a disease that gradually deteriorated, were the official cause of death. His later years were altered by the illness, yet it did not define him. The illness resulted in persistent exhaustion balance issues, periodic forgetfulness, weakening of the muscles, prolonged periods of physical fatigue. Its anonymity was what made it especially cruel. He looked fine on good days. Even standing became challenging on bad days. Anthony decided to keep quiet about his condition rather than make it public. More than sickness, he feared sympathy. Instead of being recognized for his deterioration, he wanted to be remembered for his work. Reasons for his decision to keep it secret. Anthony felt that illness shouldn't be turned into a show in this fictional narrative. His entire life, people had been observing him, analyzing his facial expressions, and speculating about his private life. He made the decision that this last chapter would only be his. According to close pals, he once said, "For 50 years, I gave them my face. I own the remainder of me." He refused intrusive procedures that would have lowered his standard of living. Rather, he chose routine, comfort, and dignity. The last months, getting ready to say farewell. Anthony started organizing his affairs as the sickness worsened, not with melancholy, but with insight. He was a letter writer. He arranged his own archives. He discreetly made contact with former acquaintances. In this made-up story, he accepted death long before it came. His body gradually deteriorated, and eventually respiratory failure issues became inevitable, as doctors subsequently confirmed. Years of physical strain had already pushed his emotions to the breaking point. The passing moment, calm, not pandemonium, surrounded Anthony as he slept. No emergency call was made. Not a dramatic scenario. Don't panic. Just silence. A caretaker saw that he was breathing more slowly. He was gone by daybreak. According to the official fake report, respiratory issues brought on by progressive neurological degeneration were the cause of death. The shockwave of emotion fans responded incredulously. How could someone so powerful disappear? Why were we unaware? He had an eternal feeling. That was television's illusion of permanence in the absence of reality. Colleagues recalled his unwavering dedication to craft, discipline, and intensity. He was credited by younger actors with teaching them that soap opera acting was storytelling under duress rather than lesser acting. A legacy greater than death. Anthony's legacy in this made-up world was perseverance rather than just a persona. He demonstrated that longevity is important, craft is important, it is a right to privacy. Even though his passing was tragic, it served as a lesson in the quiet power of strength. Final thoughts. Anthony Geary's passing in this wholly made-up tale was about closure rather than sadness. He led a noisy life. He passed away quietly, and he left an enduring legacy. Not a headline, not a rumor, not a show, but a corpus of work that lives on long after he does not. Ultimately, Anthony is not defined by his made-up cause of death. His life does. His decisions do. His readiness to move aside gracefully does. He didn't try to live forever. Long after his body could no longer speak for him, he believed that his work would. And it will. There is sorrow when the last chapter comes to an end, but there is also serenity. There is comfort in the knowledge that Anthony Geary lived life to the fullest, departed with contemplation, and did not fear death. There is comfort in the knowledge that his tale did not fade away, but instead became ingrained in memory, where it will endure forever. Saying goodbye is never simple. However, certain farewells seem appropriate. This one does.